Malcolm, 20 years, $2 trillion spent, nearly 3,000 soldiers killed in the country. There are folks, some who are saying, we gain nothing out of this. The Taliban is back in charge. Do you agree with that assessment? Was it wise for the United States to go into Afghanistan? And what the hell happened here that the intelligence community thought that it would be 60, 90 days that this would actually happen when it was a mere several days?
Well, first off, we had a mission to go into Afghanistan in 2001, which was to take down the support structure of al-Qaeda, which, by the way, at that time in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan was actually running the training programs for the Taliban. They essentially were organizing and maintaining professionalism in the Taliban's military forces at that time. That mission was accomplished relatively quickly. We routed al-Qaeda's forces, and then by February 2002, the Bush administration completely changed its sights about what it actually was doing. They started going, of course, planning to invade Iraq. And all of the resources that had flowed into Afghanistan, all of the forces that were in that region completely shifted away from Afghanistan towards Iraq. Now, it was always folly to think that we were going to come in there and create our own country based on our values, our morals, despite how the people on the ground live there. It is a very simple country. I went in very soon after 9/11, right after the Tora Bora operations, and it was very clear to me that the people on the ground there wanted some fundamental things that just worked well with the Taliban. The right to live by their own culture, within their culture, because the Taliban were Afghans. The right to worship their God in the way that they wanted to, which was fundamental Islamic, and of course, to maintain the prosperity that they could understand from the culture they lived in and get, future prosperity, which for them was getting their sons married, right? Having children, grandchildren, getting their sons married. They were not looking to go drive around in Camaros. The most they wanted, perhaps, was a few more goats, perhaps a donkey, even often the pie in the sky, a pickup truck to help their little farms. But that is not something we offered. We offered to restructure the entire country precisely like the Soviet Union did when they invaded Afghanistan in the late 1970s and wanted to remake this. That image of trying to remake it is what created this one-year cycle every year of saying everything's going great, the armed forces are holding it, we're rebuilding Afghanistan. When the number $2 trillion dropped that was the effort that we put into Afghanistan. It's absolutely phenomenal that we did that. That money went into the coffers of the political elite, the con men, and the billionaires who were all living in Abu Dhabi and Dubai when they flew out in their executive jets here a couple of days ago. To answer your second question, the armed forces of Afghanistan was a paper army. Quite a bit of it was. Yes, there were many fighters who were very good. Yes, there were a lot of interpreters and logistics support people who helped us greatly. But for the most part, many of the officers were corrupt. Many of the senior leadership in the armed forces were corrupt. The military, all the money, 60, 70 billion we were putting in a year, that money was just getting stolen. An enormous amount of that money went to U.S. government contractors. And when we ended our operations, all of those contractors supporting the Afghan army disappeared. The Afghans cut a deal with the Taliban. That's how this country collapsed in a matter of days. The Taliban in some provinces were being, had cut these deals with the local tribal leaders and perhaps even some of the provincial governors, and were sending representative groups of men, some of their terror cells, that were underground, 20, 30, 40 guys going to the province house and declaring the province captured. There was no real war or linear, battlefield, showing mobile battles of them actually winning victories. The few places they did attack, the soldiers left and went home. That should sound familiar because that's what the Iraqi army did in 2001
right.
2002 when we invaded Afghanistan. 2003, sorry about that.
But then you hear the fear of what's going to happen to women and children there. We already are seeing some of these videos. You're already seeing people talk about the human rights abuses. And so then the question is, what should have been done? First of all, was our military properly prepared to extract people from the country? Could we have avoided these scenes? Should the United States military have sealed off this airport and had it under its control to be able to coordinate flights out and things along those lines? What should have been done to avoid the chaos over the weekend and what's still happening right now?
I'm sorry, you were always going to have that chaos. So now it's time for a little history lesson, because one of the things that I mentioned on air over the last couple of days is quite simply this. Americans are culturally ignorant of other peoples, and they don't understand that those peoples have a vote in what happens out there. And many of those, again, the reason that airport was surrounded so quickly and flooded, many of those people who are Taliban today were Afghan National Army 3 days ago, right? So should we have done this? Yes. There could have been an enormous quantity of preparation, but the United States Armed Forces cannot bend space and time to our will and suddenly have 100 transport aircraft there. We had been mobilizing a few days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, to bring in 6,000 to 7,000 troops into that region. But many of the commanders surrendered their forces. The government left. The Taliban took their few hundred men and drove in from Jalalabad or came up from Kandahar, which is an 8-hour drive, and were there before any resources could flow into that place. Should we have been better prepared? Absolutely. Will Joe Biden have to take a hit for that? He said the buck stops with him. But the most important part of this story is the fact that this was negotiated years ago by the Trump administration. They gave the Taliban Afghanistan. The Taliban did not attack us or kill U.S. forces as part of that agreement in exchange for 5,000 of the most hardcore Taliban members and leadership to be released back into the Taliban, and they are all there. The president of Taliban, of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan today, is a person who was released under that deal. The Taliban were just waiting because it was given to them. The Afghan people who were there, the tribal leadership, were waiting for them as well and waiting to surrender. So we could not have, unless you listen to guys like me, right? The mid-level intelligence guys, the low-level intelligence guys who say, these guys are going to run it the first shot. Well, we had more faith in that. But as Secretary of Defense Austin said, you can't buy faith and you can't, you can't train in faith, and you can't buy loyalty. And their loyalty is to their immediate families. They are now going to drop those uniforms, go home, buy a couple of more camels, a couple of more goats with the money they had. And before you think that that's a stereotype, that is a real thing, okay? And they are going to live their lives. The Taliban will establish a national government across the tribal areas, and they will go right back to 2001. But Roland, one last point. I mentioned history. This happened to the British in 1842. The only problem is in the first British-Afghan War is that all British forces in Kabul were slaughtered. Slaughtered. Only 3 survivors out of a 2,000-man force. And they let those 3 survivors go into Pakistan to let them know what they had done to them. The British tried this in the 1890s again, the Russians in the 1980s. Look, you just have to learn these lessons. Don't go to a place that you don't understand. It should have been Americans that spoke Dari and Pashto, not having to hire interpreters. We don't do that. We run in and we use, with cultural ignorance, and we expect things to go our way.
Malcolm Nance, always a pleasure. Thanks for the breakdown. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek.
What's going on? This Quavo Huncho, but right now you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Barry Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. In Alabama, a doctor says he ain't treating nobody unvaccinated. That's it. Jason Valentine, a physician at Diagnostic Medical Center Infirmary Health in Mobile, Alabama, posted a photo on Facebook this week of him pointing to a sign taped to a door informing patients of his new policy starting October 1st. The sign says Dr. Valentine will no longer see patients that are not vaccinated against COVID-19. Valentine says he came to his decision because COVID is a miserable way to die, and he cannot watch them die like that. Alabama, of course, reported 4,465 new coronavirus cases on Wednesday. The state has recorded more than 645,000 cases since the start of the pandemic. The thing here is that he said, Adrian, he can't do it for people who have actually turned him down. He said, no, I'm sorry. If you're going to turn the vaccine down, I'm not going to treat you. There was one guy who was a video that went viral. I think it was a TikTok video. He did like 2 minutes, and he was mad as hell because his wife has a particular illness, and he said point blank, he said, since y'all believe in God so much, and since y'all say choice, he said, if you get sick, he said, play it out. Don't go to the hospital. He said, play it out. He said, if you don't, this is what he said. He said, if you don't believe the doctors and if you don't believe the scientists, play that thing out. Y'all go ahead and roll it.
Hey folks, how you doing? I just got a quick question about this whole COVID, not getting vaccinated and running to the fucking hospital once you get the virus fucking deal, because this shit is out of fucking control, all right? And I'm gonna give you a quick story on why I think it's out of fucking control. Last week I had to bring my wife into the hospital. She has stage 4 breast cancer. She was dealing with some symptoms, and I had to bring her in to get some fluid drained. She was having some pain, blah, blah, blah. She was in there for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she honestly should have stayed one more day. maybe 2 more days, okay? But on the 3rd day, instead of draining her fluid and what they wanted to do, they told us that she had to be discharged because they had no room left in the hospital because of COVID. Here's my question. Why 99% of everybody that's in the hospital with COVID right now is unvaccinated, okay? If you really fucking believe that COVID's not real, and you really believe that it's not a big deal, and you really believe that you don't need to get the vaccine, that is your fucking right, okay? I'm not gonna argue with you about that. What I am gonna argue with about is you running to the fucking hospital once you get the virus. If you don't trust the medical field to prevent you from getting it, why do you trust them to cure you from it? Why do you run to the fucking hospital? If you really believe that COVID's not a big deal and it's not this, that, the other, and you don't get the vaccine because stick to your fucking guns and keep your motherfucking ass at home. Stop running to the hospital, putting everybody else at fucking risk, and in turn, the collateral damages. People like my wife who actually need medical fucking help for a chronic fucking disease get kicked out of the hospital because your dumb ass is too stupid to go get a fucking vaccine shot. Keep your ass at home. If you really believe COVID's not a big deal, prove it. Stick to your fucking guns, keep your ass at home, and fucking deal with it.
Well, I think I'm gonna start with Reese because Reese, I think he went to the Reese school of viral videos. I think I heard at least 28 F-bombs, 3 or 4 MFs in there, and so you get to comment first.
Well, you know, I completely can empathize with where he's coming from. I don't know if people remember last year, the whole reason why we shut down as a country was because we don't have the capacity to deal with a surge in hospitalizations. I guess people forgot about the tents in the garages and the ship that had to come to New York and the mobile morgues that were established because of the amount of people that were dying. We don't have an unlimited amount of hospital capacity. In fact, as of yesterday, there were 5 states that have over 90% ICU capacity. Alabama, the state of that doctor who's refusing to treat people who are unvaccinated, has 99.3% ICU capacity. And that does that. So that means if you have cancer, if you have a heart attack, if you have a car accident, any kind of situation that requires medical attention, you're fighting with people in the hospital who refuse to take the vaccine, period. And it is a little bit unfair to those folks because there are people who have pre-existing conditions that make them immunocompromised so that they can't take the vaccine. And because of their immunocompromised position, they need more medical treatment that they cannot get. In some places, elective surgeries are being canceled again. And so this is a problem. This is creating a burden on our medical system. And that's why we have the concept, like I said earlier, of public health. It's not just a matter of personal choice because people on a personal level cannot always be compelled to do the right thing for a society at large. So I completely empathize with his frustration. And one other thing I want to say too is I'm trying to not be completely cold-hearted about this because I really do find it heartbreaking that we are seeing more and more stories about people who are unvaccinated that are dying. I just saw a story yesterday, a 49-year-old Black woman who's a teacher in Florida. She took her entire family to get vaccinated, but she did not get vaccinated herself, and now she's died of COVID. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton yesterday shared a statistic about how 120,000 children are now orphans because they've lost their parents to COVID. And we're at a position where this is preventable largely by taking the vaccine. And it is a choice to not take it. But that choice is impacting so many people who don't have a choice but to put their fate in the hands of people doing what's best for society. And so it's very scary. And the one other point I want to make about that teacher is that her family stated that one of the reasons why she didn't take, or the main reason she didn't take the vaccine is because she heard information that she was uncomfortable with. And that goes back to the thing that I've been screaming about on this show for years now, is that disinformation is a deadly force in our communities. And the things like the Tuskegee experiment are being weaponized to detract us and deter us from taking the vaccine, even though Black people have a disproportionately higher hospitalization rate and mortality rate from the vaccine. And so we have to fight back against this disinformation that is really exacerbating this hesitancy that people might naturally have. And we have to try to save some of these lives because people are being indoctrinated or fooled by this really, really insidious disinformation that is permeating our communities.
So, Adrian, is the doctor, is he right or is he wrong?
You know, I was reading the article, I saw a lot of folks citing, oh, you took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And it's like, well, yeah, but that didn't come with definitions, and it didn't come with with a series of clauses or corollaries. It says do no harm. And in his eyes, he's doing no harm. He's not allowing unvaccinated, very dangerous people, carriers of this disease, to come into contact and contaminate his work environment with his other patients, potentially some of which who can't literally, for health reasons, get vaccinated. So, no, I think if you're going to be in this environment of woo, 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 personal choice, oh, except if you're a doctor, like, or except if you're a woman who has to make a really serious decision with her own body regarding pregnancy, no, you can't pick and choose where your personal choice applies for your own benefit and for your own, you know, self-interest. It's either personal choice or it isn't. So, you know, I that piece really frustrates me, because the same people who say personal choice don't believe the same thing when it comes to women's bodies. Now, the doctor leveraging social media to make his point, I think is valid. I think it's important that the medical community starts fighting back against folks who refuse to accept the science, like the gentleman very colorfully said, who refuse to accept the science of vaccines, but then want to bang down the door for an ICU bed. You know, I think the medical community fighting back is valid and important.
Greg, doctor, is he right or is he wrong? Fair, unfair?
I don't know if it's a question of fair or unfair, Roland, quite frankly. Certainly you can go down the road to Tuskegee, where they have a whole bioethics center, and debate the question of the ethics of a doctor saying he's not going to treat somebody that's sick. But I agree with you, Adrian. I think that, you know, in the state of Alabama, of course, it's legal. But something Ben Watson said a minute ago is very important. This is political. It's two separate things going on that overlap. One is the science, and Dr. Hilton has talked about it, and you've been saying it since the beginning of this. We all knew this was coming. You've been talking about it nonstop. And so we know that we don't have cures in our arms with the vaccines. It just means we may be asymptomatic now if we get it, or we're not going to go to the hospital. As I'm sitting in class again last night, you know, everybody's masked up, and I'm saying we might have COVID in here right now. There's not the infrastructure to test everybody every day. And even if there weren't, we got it, and you quarantined and went home. That's one thing. But with the variant, and we're starting to see breakthroughs now, it may be the Delta variant get you, or the Lambda variant get you, or so forth and so on. But that's a whole universe of conversation. The other conversation, and Watson brought it up, is a political conversation. The white nationalist party in this country has decided that its best shot to capture the federal government in 2022 and then 2024 is to embrace this weaponized COVID and use its followers as literal human shields to force their way back into public office. And so Biden's response today, telling Cardona, you know, go and exert the federal apparatus through the Department of Education onto these states, that is a response that is partially political. They're trying to get to the elections of 22 and 24. That's what Abbott is doing. That's what DeSantis is doing in Texas and Florida. They are literally rallying this for political points. Now, the only wild card in this is that week by week wild card that we've been talking about, Adrian, you just said, because as this virus that doesn't recognize race or politics continues to make us sick and kill us, we are in a race literally against time, and what the white nationalists have calculated is they're willing to take that risk. So when Kay Ivey in Alabama says, well, what else can I do? I can't tell them to take it. I didn't told them to take it. No, you didn't tell them to take it early on, because you made a political calculation to put your white nationalist followers on the line, and now that they're dying, the thing that might break this up is those white people and those black people and those other people who come to their senses when somebody in their family gets sick or dies, worse if they're the carrier, vaccinated, unvaccinated, to kill somebody. But frankly, none of us know how this is going to turn out. There is no roadmap, but there are two separate things playing, and a lot of it's overlapping. There's the science and the medicine, and there's the politics. And we have to be very clear about that. And to Roland Martin and Filter's credit, you've been clear about it from day one, brother.
Dr.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh. I was gonna say,
hold up. Adrian, then Reese, go.
Really quickly to your point, those are the folks who have that literally front door death experience, whose stories aren't being told on the news outlets, that these anti or vaccine hesitant folks are watching. Fox News isn't telling the story of this young couple who passed away. It's CNN, it's BBC, but that's not the platforms that these folks are watching. And I just, how do we compel Fox News to tell these stories? Like, good luck with that. I struggle to figure out how we send those messages.
Mm-hmm.
Reese?
Yeah, so let me just say this. For all of the talk about the inequities in the healthcare system and the justifiable mistrust that Black people have in the healthcare system and in the government, the vaccine is the most race-neutral solution that is out there. It's free, it's readily available, and there is, I won't say no discrimination, because at the reality there are some ways that people might not have the ability to take the vaccine, but it is as neutral as it gets. So that's something that can prevent you from being hospitalized or even dying or having a severe case of it. Now, on the flip side, the treatment side, now that's where all of the inequities come in, because you have somebody like Governor Greg Abbott, who has had a third booster shot, which is not available to the general public, and he had Regeneron. He had a monoclonal antibody. And I know somebody who has COVID, and they were vaccinated, so thank God they didn't have a severe case, but they were able to get Regeneron. But you know that I would say they had to jump through so many hoops. Now, if you think that as you, a regular schmegular Black person who's not insured and who can barely get into an ER is going to get a very expensive treatment like Regeneron to save your life, you're delusional. So all of the paranoia and justifiable mistrust and distrust that you have in the government and the healthcare system, apply that to the treatment side, because that's where we are absolutely seeing the disparities in race and the disparities in the access that people have. And so if you have to throw your lot in with trusting one side or another, I would rather throw my lot in with the most neutral solution of something that has been administered 4.8 billion times around the world, and that is the vaccine. Not trying to hang my hat on getting access to Regeneron, which is something that has thousands of doses perhaps throughout the entire state in some states, and it's not even available everywhere. So that's just something to think about. What's neutral, the vaccine, or what's not neutral, the treatment.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Folks from Seek.com, Black-owned company founded by Mary Spio. Folks got a couple of products that's for our listeners and viewers. This is their VR headset where you can watch their content, 360-degree video, as well as virtual reality video. Just pop your phone right into here, close it up, and then you can see that VR content. They got different color VR headsets. This one is blue and white. Y'all Sigmas will love that one. Of course, I prefer the black and gold one. That's the one I have at the house. You also, of course, have their headphones. Greg, you'll like these here. They got the black and gold headphones, but Greg, you might like these all gold ones right here. You might like these right here. 360-degree sound as well. You can use this for gaming. You can use this, of course, for music as well, watching movies, all of that good stuff. Use the promo code RMVIP21, RMVIP21, if you want to actually get one of these two products. And of course, when you purchase them, the resources portion of that comes back to us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered.
My next guest is not one of those stupid people, but he does like to call out stupid people. Y'all, joining us right now here at Spanish Hills Golf and Country Club is DL Hughley.
What's up, man?
DL, good to see you.
Good to see you too,
I've
bro.
been following you on Instagram where you've been trying to be very patient with some of these
simple ass niggas. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. It's you know, at a certain point, like in the beginning, I can understand a level of reticence. All the questions that. But now we have enough data for you to be making a decision. And if your decision is no decision, then I can respect that. But there are a couple of things you need to do. One is to stay away from people, and to accept the fact that you are a drain on the system. So I think the funny thing I see about people who aren't going to take the vaccine, they don't go to Facebook when they get sick. They don't go to Instagram when they get sick. They go right to the hospital, and they become a drain on the society. And I think that if you have the courage of your convictions, like it's all these people, you won't wear a mask, a guy will protect you, but you don't have a problem carrying a gun. Like, what is he, busy that day? And so it just doesn't make sense. And for our people, for us, it's killing us disproportionately and largely because of misinformation. Now, you know, I got sick. I got my family sick. My son still
you got COVID. You got COVID.
I got COVID.
Yeah.
I passed out on stage. I was suffering from my son got sick. He still has to go to a cardiologist. Everybody at my work, there's one of my work coworkers that had blood pressure issues from then till now. So you almost kill somebody, and it changes your perspective. I had long haul COVID so bad that, Roland, I'm gonna tell you, it was many days I thought I was gonna punch my ticket. I was like, I'm not gonna live my life like this. And so all these people who think that your motivation is just that you're paid, as asinine as that you're paid by a pharmaceutical company. How about you got sick, you sicken people you love, and you would rather that people didn't have the same experiences you did. Experiences isn't the best teacher, it's just the hardest.
I showed the video last week. There was a lawyer in the UK, white guy. He goes, well, I'm glad I got COVID. I'm glad I got COVID so I can show y'all this is not that big of a deal. It's just like the flu. So he records these videos, and then he recorded one of the videos. He says, well, last night I was in lots of pain. He says I was curled up in the fetal position for 6 hours. And I was sitting there thinking, I've had the flu. I ain't never been curled up in the fetal position for 6 hours. Right. That sounds painful as hell.
Well, it was
9 days later, his ass was dead.
Well, I think that, but people refuse. People often they cite the Tuskegee experiment, and the families, the descendants of those people came on and said, so it's nothing that's going to satisfy some people.
Dude, I had one of these ignorant, super weave YouTube historians dogging me because I had Dr. Ebony Hilton on. We were talking about Tuskegee,
right? And
we're discussing it, and I said, y'all, I went to the museum in Tuskegee. Right. They made it clear they were not injected. They actually were not treated.
Like Henrietta Lacks wasn't.
And all these folks were sitting here, oh, Roland Martin, you wrong about it. We live streamed the event from Howard University of those Tuskegee descendants, and folks sitting there, well, I don't know why you saying that.
At the same time Tuskegee was happening, black and brown people all over the country were being immunized for polio, right? At the same time that happened, right? So it's really math. In order to get herd immunity, you need 80 to 90% of the population. Since they only comprise 58%, and we are 13%, and Latins are 30-some%, you need that collective, because there are only two viruses. Well, there's only one virus that has been eradicated, and that was the polio vaccine. And it took 184 years to do it, and that was because they had to immunize the entire world.
There you go.
And they killed it. So you have to immunize. Right now, these same people who are talking about all these things that they're not going to do are protected by vaccines. The same vaccine that Jonas Salk, a variation of that, that he invented in 1954, my granddaughter took who was 3 months old, who was 5 months old, took. So, and the reason we don't have those things, the mumps, the measles, the polio running rampant. Matter of fact, polio is in 2 places, in Afghanistan and it's in Pakistan. And they're going to, and once they get rid of it there, they'll eradicate it. So you're protected by the very vaccines. If you want to leave and go back to Africa, you're going to take a bunch of vaccines.
Hey, Doc,
if you want to go to school, you're going to take a bunch. So it's
you will not go into that country.
You can't. Well, you can if you, well, I don't know how you think you can't go to college. You can't. There's so many things you can't do. And really, it's getting to a point where. So, you know, the company I work for, Friday, made a mandate that you had to be vaccinated. And I think that once the FDA approves one of these vaccines, companies are going to have cover, and they're going to say, you got to take it. And then we'll see how convicted you are. Because instead of ramping up your immune system, you better brush up on your resume. I hope CMOS is hiring. Because it's
I had a brother, we stopped by the restaurant. I was in Houston Thursday, Friday, Saturday. My aunt passed away. We had a funeral, and we went to dinner. And I was, and 6 of us, 3 of them doctors, 2 emergency room doctors.
Right.
So the brother comes up, waiter, no mask. And so he's talking. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, first question, are you vaccinated? He says, no. I said, your ass need a mask. I got up, went to the manager. I said, first of all, do you require your waiters to be vaccinated? He said, no. I said, well, you damn sure need to require them at least be wearing masks. Right. I said,
that was in Houston, right?
It was in Houston. And he said,
but don't you know that the apparently Corona does not exist in it doesn't exist in Texas or Florida. So I think it doesn't. Apparently it doesn't. But.
Because Abbott and DeSantis just swear it doesn't. And I made the manager go get that brother a mask, and I pulled him aside. I said, he said, boy, I got some questions. I went, 1, 2, 3. Here are 3 black doctors who can answer any question you have, bro.
You know, and I'm not. Ultimately, it's this for me. My motivation is what my motivation has been when someone is slain by the police. My motivation is what my motivation has been when we talk about voting, because I think we pretty much have the same kind of overall perspective. My perspective is what it has been now. I'm trying to do, and I'm sure you are trying to do the best we can for our people with the situation we have. Ultimately, there are facts you cannot dispute. 97% of the people who are in the hospital are unvaccinated.
98.
Okay. Lollapalooza had a big festival. 385,000 people showed up. 200 people got sick.
1,000 showed up outside of the Milwaukee arena where they won the NBA championship. 500 got COVID.
See, and so and all those, and the requirement at Lollapalooza was that those people be vaccinated. 90% of them be vaccinated, and the others show a negative COVID test. Contrast with Roland Loud and see the only place where there's more virus in Florida is Louisiana and Botswana, literally. So people can have their. My question is this: we know that there's no debating that the virus actually exists and it is causing a great deal of harm. What is your action? What is your response? Because when you ramp up your immune system, that doesn't immunize you against disease. You may do better if you get a virus.
Right.
You might have a better outcome.
A brother Lyric told me, I'm drinking a lot of green tea.
Okay.
I went,
okay.
Okay.
So, it's really simple for me. You almost kill your son and see if all these people have these religious epiphanies or these professional epiphanies. When you see your son has to go to a cardiologist every 6 months because of something you did, or you see one of your coworkers struggling with long-haul COVID, tell me how you feel.
Right.
And if you're inhumane, if that doesn't move you. And I think that a lot of people are seeing a lot of suffering and pretending like it isn't real. And and we don't have the luxury. The American life expectancy last year dropped, what, a year? Mm-hmm. Ours, African Americans, dropped 3 years. So we've lost 3 years because of a pandemic you say doesn't exist.
Right.
Our life expectancy dropped 3 years. So these are things that are real. And as far as these people want to come on your show, I'm never going to let you on my show to lie. I ain't going to do it. I don't care what you call me.
Doc, that's it.
I don't need you to. Here's the thing. I'm not going to give you the other side of somebody who ain't a professional. You're not a virologist, an epidemiologist. You a dude that talks slick on Instagram. And you lie, and you literally lied so much you can't even tweet from your own name because you've spread so much misinformation that you're a known liar. Why would I? Why do I need to?
Right.
What is it we need to know? If there are 93 million people who haven't taken the vaccine, what is so special about your ass that I got to have you on? Right. They could lie too.
Right.
So and this notion that they're going to bully you or call you names, I don't give a damn what you call me. I'm a grown man, and I'm going to say what I believe. There's a reason I have a platform. There's a reason you have, and the reason you don't. Here's the reason those people don't have platforms. Because the minute they start telling lies, they get took off.
Right.
No one can keep them on.
Right.
No. Now, I suggest that they do that to us. If you call the people that put us on, and if we are lying, have us taken off. If we're spreading bald-faced, harmful falsehoods, I suggest you call them. But you know why you won't? Because we don't. There's no alternative to the truth but a lie.
I had somebody who literally said, "Man, why you? I don't like when you always interrupting people." I said, "No. When folks start lying, then I'm gonna correct them at that very point. I can't let you lie and then go,
Because it's like they're not. There is no opposite. If we know that this exists, we know that 4 million people worldwide have died. 200 million people were exposed to the virus. There literally is so much virus in some of the places in this country that only places in Africa have more. And the only reason they have more is because they don't have the access to resources.
Boom.
We would be a third world
they
country.
don't have access to, they are standing in line, walking miles for that vaccine.
Right. And so ultimately, I do know this. I was frightened when I took my whole family at one time. What kind of man would I be if I've admitted the things I've done in terms of indiscretions in my personal life? If I've been open book about that, why would I lie about my motivations for giving? Why am I going? And who are you? I should lie to. If I ain't gonna lie to my woman, why would I lie to you?
Right.
I want the best for you. If you don't want the best for you, I get it. But I think you have an obligation to make a reasonable decision. I tell you what, when you get sick, find out what address those people you sent to Facebook, and find out where their hospital is and go there, and stop going to hospitals where we need the resources for people who are in accidents.
Doc, I'm the same way.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek.
What's going on in this Quavo Huncho? But right now you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. Well, folks, this is video last night in Texas of Governor Greg Abbott at a Republican fundraiser. As you see, he's there in the wheelchair. He's hugging people. I mean, nobody. Go ahead and just keep running it. I know, just keep running it. Nobody is wearing a mask. Everybody is just up close. No social distancing. None of that. They taking pictures. Well, guess what? Today, his office announced that Abbott tested positive for COVID-19. Now, he had already been vaccinated. They say he is on Regeneron. And then this is a tweet that went out. Governor Greg Abbott, Gov. Abbott tested positive for COVID-19 today. His office announces Abbott is fully vaccinated and currently experiencing no symptoms, according to his communications director, Mark Miner. Now, this is the same Greg Abbott, y'all, who's been fighting the school districts from imposing mask mandates because of his executive order. He also told restaurants that if they create any kind of requirement to show COVID vaccination cards, he will have the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission pull their liquor license. Now, all of this is happening while Texas health officials have requested 5 mortuary trailers from the federal government, anticipating an influx of dead bodies due to COVID. Health officials say the trailers are needed after analyzing the rise in cases due to the contagious Delta variant. My home state has been a hotbed for the coronavirus since the beginning of the pandemic. Currently, the state has the second highest number of cases in the country, only trailing California. All this comes just one day after thousands of students and staff in Dallas-Fort Worth area return to in-person learning. Danae, wow, isn't it interesting that Greg Abbott at this big Republican fundraiser last night, hugging people, shaking hands, he tests positive for COVID today. That means if they actually follow protocols, every single person at that fundraiser needs to be in quarantine, and I'll have contact tracing because they all came into contact with a COVID positive governor.
the irony, Roland. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me back. The last time that I was here, we were just talking about the fact that he was trying to enact a very discriminatory and xenophobic policy that targeted migrants because he believed, or wanted the people of Texas to believe, that migrants were somehow, some way more susceptible to COVID-19. So it's quite ironic now that he's the one who actually has contracted COVID-19, right? It isn't the boogeyman that we look at as being immigrants carrying the virus, but it's actually the governor who does not believe in socially distancing, or the governor that doesn't believe in masking, right? It has everything to do with him and his own irresponsibility. I mean, for you to be so political that you don't want to take into consideration your own health or that of the people whose health you should be looking out for, it speaks volumes, right? This isn't a political issue. This has everything to do with the health and well-being of the people of Texas and the people across the United States of America. And it's so sad that it's really gotten to this point that people have continued to follow the former twice impeached president and his idea that this isn't real, right? That this was something that was created in order to fearmonger among people in the United States. It's so sad that that's being perpetuated long after his term has ended and after he's been voted out of office. This isn't political. This has everything to do with the health and well-being of the people in this country. And I really hope that after he now has contracted COVID-19, that he'll now see the importance of wanting to get more Texans vaccinated and wanting to get his state on the right track. But if history, right, is any indication, as we saw with the previous twice impeached president, he contracted COVID-19, but yet still continued to perpetuate a lot of the misconceptions about this virus. So I'm not really optimistic about him changing his viewpoints, but one could only hope.
You know, when I saw this, Mustafa, the first thing I thought about was Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. When last year he said that if we have to sacrifice our elderly to save the economic future of America for our children, then that's what we have to do. I wonder if Dan Patrick is saying, Governor Greg Abbott, if you die, it's to save the economy of America. Ain't it interesting what happens when it creeps up into your backyard?
My granddaddy said if you keep poking at a snake, eventually he gonna bite you. So, you know, that's that country wisdom that many of our elders actually have. You know, it's so nonsensical in what these folks can continue to do time again. They will literally sacrifice not just folks of color, they will sacrifice their own. And we see that continue to play out. You know, not just in Texas, but across our country, we've got about 40 million people who are dealing with lung disease. So they have they have these conditions that make them even more vulnerable. We know that we got about 7 million kids that fall into that number. So they are literally sacrificing our children, they're sacrificing our elders, and they just don't care because they place politics over people's lives.
Back to that Roland Mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
Football bans and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th along with special guests, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
And folks, SWAC MEAC Challenge, we, Roland Martin Unfiltered, will be broadcasting live from Atlanta that Friday and that Saturday. On that particular Friday, we'll be broadcasting from the Atlanta Braves Stadium. We'll have both university presidents, SWAC MEAC officials. It's going to be jam-packed. On Saturday, we'll be broadcasting live from the Coca-Cola Fan Zone from 2 to 6:30. Then we're going to be live streaming the halftime show as well as the music performance after the game. And so you definitely want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered on the ground at the SWAC MEAC Challenge, August 27th, August 28th. See you there. I really love this one. If you watch Fox News and you got crazy people like Sean Hannity, Maria Bartiromo, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, spreading all their nonsense about COVID, then the idiots on Fox and Friends like Ainsley Earnhardt, who literally said today that, oh, when you take Regeneron, that's like getting the vaccine. No, it's not, idiot. It's not. So check this out. Fox News is requiring that all employees provide their vaccination status today in a collective database. Oh, yeah, and this is the same people who are against vaccine passports. In a statement sent to all staff, Fox News urged employees to enter vaccination information into a portal and have implemented a mask mandate for public spaces with the buildings. The statement says the following: Dear colleagues, as all of you know, the health and safety of our employees has been our priority at Fox News Media since the start of the global pandemic 17 months ago. Whether at work or home, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a tremendous impact on all our lives. Here are some of the steps we are currently taking given the rise in COVID cases nationwide and the spread of the Delta variant. We have asked all employees, whether on site as part of our essential workforce or working remotely, to upload their vaccination status into Workday. This is being done for space planning and contract tracing purposes in conjunction with CDC, state, city health and safety guidelines. All employees must enter their status no later than today, August 17th, by close of business. Number 2, last week, we reinstated our on-site COVID testing program every Monday and Thursday for select essential employees due to their work environment within our New York offices. These employees have been contacted and will be required to test at least once weekly due to their role at Fox News Media, regardless of vaccination status. In our New York offices, masks remain optional for vaccinated individuals, but are strongly encouraged in public areas throughout the building. However, we are requiring employees to wear a mask in small, confined spaces with limited opportunities for social distancing and where there are multiple employees, including control rooms. All employees and vendors are required to complete a daily screening ahead of reporting to work. At many locations, you will be asked to display either a Work Care Go to Work green screen or a Fox Clear Pass to a security representative upon entering the building or workspace. So, Robert, it's hilarious to see all of these Fox people going nuts about mask mandates when their own company has one.
Speaking of which, I'll be on Fox at 12:45 tonight, so make sure you guys tune in for that.
Hell no,
you're right, Roland. Look, you're right, Roland. And what I don't understand about the people who are against the mask on the right at this point, last year they made the argument that all of this was to be against Donald Trump. That the whole point of the mask mandates, of the lockdowns, was to hurt Donald Trump and make sure he couldn't get reelected. Well, now the election is over. Joe Biden is in charge. Democrats are running the ship now, and it's still here. Remember, they made that argument. I bet you the day after the election, the virus will just go away magically. It did not. So what exactly did Cassie Abelai to justify their thought that somehow this is still a conspiracy theory against them, even though there are literally 600,000 fewer people in this country than there were a year ago? The entire thing does not make sense. But beyond those people on that side of the aisle, I do think we have more work to do in our communities, where we're still looking at around 31% vaccination rates in a community that has some of the highest comorbidities of any communities in the country. We have to work on getting the proper information out. We have to work on getting those federal dollars to push these vaccination drives, to push the advertising, to push the nonprofits that can get the vaccine penetration, because we cannot be falling into the same trap as the MAGAs on the other side.
Folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Football bans and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guests, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
And of course, we'll be live in Atlanta August 27th and 28th, supporting the SWAC MEAC Challenge in partnership with Coca-Cola. Friday, we'll broadcast the show from the Atlanta Braves Baseball Stadium, interviewing officials with the SWAC and the MEAC, plus the university presidents. On Saturday, August 28th, we'll be broadcasting live from the Coca-Cola fan zone outside of the stadium. And then, of course, we'll be live streaming the halftime show and the performance after the game. So check out Roland Martin Unfiltered from the SWAC MEAC Challenge in Atlanta. And don't forget, the game airs at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN on Saturday, August 28th. The NFL, they're making it clear players need to get vaccinated or they're going to have to go into a protocol program. Atlanta Falcons, they're the first team to have a 100% team vaccinated. How did that happen? They cut 2 unvaccinated players. Here's the deal. If you're unvaccinated, you now have to wait 5 days before another team is eligible to pick you up. So if you're an NFL player and you choose not to get vaccinated, you might be out of a job. Fair or not? Let's talk to Ben Watson, longtime NFL player, played tight end in the NFL for several teams. Ben, glad to have you on the show.
Good to be with you.
You have coaches like Ron Rivera who's been really pissed off with players not getting vaccinated. The NFL's also made it clear they're not going to do what they did last year. Players come up positive, they're not delaying games. This could actually cost teams wins if they have to forfeit games as well. What do you make of the NFL making it perfectly clear if they're taking a very hard stance when it comes to vaccinations in the NFL season?
Well, both the NFLPA as well as the NFL and all players, look, all the cities have a vested interest in having a full NFL season. Look, last year there was no vaccine. But last year, no game was canceled. A couple were postponed. Nobody missed any game checks. That was a big thing that came out early as well. So not much has changed from a protocol standpoint. But now what the NFL is saying is if you have not gotten the COVID-19 shot, you will have certain freedoms. You won't have freedoms that others have that have gotten it. And so what we've seen, look, I'm proud of the NFL players, quite frankly, because when you look at the vaccination rate before the season started, so go back about a month, about 85% or so of players had gotten one of the COVID vaccine shots. Now, about a month later into training camp, 92% of players. And so they're trending higher than the general public. Players are getting vaccinated. Of course, there are some that aren't. And I, for one, say, you know what? It's your choice. We will always say you have a choice. As a union, we say, look, we're going to protect players. We're going to do our best to provide you with the education. But at the end of the day, you have a choice. But it's going to be more difficult for you moving forward if you have not taken the shot.
And look, this is what I keep saying. Yes, individuals have choices, and your choice may very well determine whether you have a job.
Well, it's funny you brought up the Falcons. Now, I will venture to say, depending on who that player is, I've been in the NFL for 16 years, depending on who that player is, they could get vaccinated or not get vaccinated and not get cut. And so I'll venture to say that those who were removed from the team, the Atlanta Falcons, were probably on the lower end of the depth chart. But yes, even coming in, look, it's difficult for teams and staffs to deal with this. You have vaccinated players and coaches that are coming up testing positive, unvaccinated testing positive. And this needs to be a safe environment. So if you haven't been vaccinated, you'll be subjected to many of the same protocols as last year. Contact tracing, mask wearing, social distancing. If you are vaccinated, you have different freedoms. And so as the country goes, you will see the NFL go. And as you mentioned before, cases are skyrocketing. And so it's a very real and present danger, but it's also an evolving virus that we don't have all the answers to.
Well, how about this here? You have also coaches. NFL announced that Tier 1 personnel must be vaccinated. Well, the Minnesota Vikings, they fired Rick Dennison, who was their assistant coach because he refused the COVID-19 vaccine. Again, Dennison had a choice. He made his choice. They said goodbye.
And also what's specific about that is that coaches are not unionized. And so when you have a union like the NFLPA, we can negotiate with the league. We can protect our players. We can agree on certain protocols, which are the protocols that are in place right now to prevent these sorts of outbreaks, so to speak. But coaches don't have that. And so you see a coach getting fired simply because he didn't take a vaccine.
One of the things, I'm going to bring in a panel here, Reese. One of the things I think is important here, that what we're seeing, when Ben talked about you're seeing the increase in people getting the vaccine, it's because when they realized their jobs were on the line. Same thing happened. Look, people are sitting here, is the federal government going to issue a mandate? Guess what? Corporations finally said, we're not waiting on y'all. So when Disney and Walmart and law firms and other companies start saying, you ain't vaccinated, you can't work here. The hospitals did it. I mean, I see these people out here protesting who worked at hospitals saying this is unfair. And the hospital's like, what the hell are you talking about? We're the ones who are in the medical business. You get people who work in nursing homes who are complaining, same thing. But we've seen so many people who died of COVID who were in nursing homes. This is what happens when private business, when big business says, okay, y'all can fight over those mask mandates and all sort of stuff along those lines. Even all those yahoos on Fox News, we discussed it yesterday. They're running their mouths on the air about mask mandates. Guess what? The company that cuts their checks got a mask mandate. Fox News yelling about COVID passports. Every person who works for Fox News got to put their information in a database to show and prove they're vaccinated. So it's amazing how folks run their mouths, but when the company says this is how we rolling, you can make your choice. Keep your job or get that shot.
And it's quite disingenuous, honestly. If you have people that are vaccinated, people that have taken the shot, but then they will continue to talk about the fact that others maybe shouldn't. Also, I would venture to say that this is a result of some education. Because especially in the NFL, you have very healthy individuals. You have individuals who have played an entire season last year without missing game checks, without missing games, even though there was no shot to take. So the protocols that were in place were clearly working. You also have the history. We talk about it all the time. There's a history when it comes to medicine and especially the Black community and how we have been mistreated, how we have been impacted unfairly, disproportionately, all the way going back to medicine. So there's a hesitancy that's there, but also there's the education. You wait, you listen, you learn, you talk to other people, you talk to the experts, you see the things that are happening, and then you make your personal decision. So specifically, you start to see that this rise. Yes, part of it is because many players did not want to have to deal with some of these inconveniences, getting tested every day, those sorts of things. But there's also the impact of, okay, I've done my research, I've studied, I've talked to my family, I've made a decision that's best for me. I made it because I wanted to do it, not because I was immediately forced to without me having any agency. And I will always stand up for a player having agency. That's also what the NFLPA will always stand for.
I think, Reese, I think a lot of those players did do that, but also I think that threat of not getting that check had an impact as well.
I mean, let's be honest. The honor system didn't work, right? I mean, people were given 8 months to make the choice to get the vaccine, to do what's in the best interest for their health and for the best interest of the country. That's why we have a concept called public health. I know people are all up on their high horse about personal choice. Well, unfortunately, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Your personal choices impact everybody else around you. And so I think that everybody had as much patience as they possibly could, but when they saw that we were starting to plateau when it came to people taking the vaccine, and now there's a surge of the variant, the Delta variant, and that's not the last variant that we're going to have, and people were not being persuaded, and actually they were doubling and tripling down on not taking the vaccine. These corporations and the government had to step in and say, listen, take the vaccine or you're going to have to suffer the consequences. We're not going to subsidize your obstinance when it comes to believing that you don't have to take the vaccine. If you want to spend a whole bunch of money on CMOS and vitamins and increasing your immune system, more power to you, but you're not going to be able to, without consequence, go into the emergency room and increase the medical costs for everybody in our company when it comes to corporations and their healthcare, because they have to pay for that. And the same thing with the government. And so we tried the honor system with the mask, and all kind of people dropped the mask, and we saw a resurgence of COVID. And so unfortunately, you have to twist people's arms to do something that is really in their best interest. And some people will disagree that it's in their best interest. But even if you don't feel like it's in your personal best interest, I think it's indisputable that it's in the best interest of the country, that we have as many people vaccinated as possible, that we're taking as many preventative measures in trying to stunt this disease from taking off even more. And, protecting those who actually have no choice but to not take the vaccine, like kids and like people with certain medical conditions. And so if you have to twist people's arms, you know, hey, I think the country is actually still mild compared to other places like Canada, which just recently instituted a ban on air or public transportation if you are not vaccinated. They're not even offering an accommodation for you having a rapid test. If you're not vaccinated, you're not getting on a plane. You're not going on public transportation, period. So I still think that when it comes to America, hey, maybe you can find a place that's not for vaccination that you can work at. You don't have to work for the federal government. You still have a choice, but your choice has consequences, period.
Well, we had, of course, we saw this couple out of Florida, Adrian, who were arrested. They had a fake vaccination card when they flew to Hawaii. They their ass in jail right now. So you see that
That's
happening.
forging a federal document.
Huh?
That's forging a federal document.
Well, and I think that's the thing that people don't understand. You run around talk about your little fake vaccine cards. You are violating the law.
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen multiple stories of even healthcare professionals producing CDC cards either fraudulently, like not having received a vaccine, but being given a CDC card, or reproducing them and selling them illegally on things like eBay. Like, really? You think the federal government isn't out here monitoring the transactions of false documentation around vaccination? You know, and it's not just employers that are jumping on the responsibility bandwagon. Insurance companies are now making you pay a larger portion of your hospital bill if you're unvaccinated and end up in the ICU with COVID complications, which I think is a reasonable. And look, I'm not the one who's going to be banging a drum for big insurance companies, but this is a reasonable. This is a reasonable carve out that they're making, because these folks are taking risks not just with their lives, but with everybody else's lives, and using up valuable healthcare resources in a time where it's not where folks are suffering from things that aren't just COVID.
We also are seeing this impact in education, Greg. There are a lot of concerned professors out there as well when it comes to students returning to the classroom, kind of protocols that they actually have in place as well. The folks are putting out all sorts of things, talking about there were, you were having different, strikes at Spelman. I reached out to Spelman. They said that it's actually not happening. They laid out exactly what's going on about the fall classes. They will have in-class learning, but they have mandatory vaccinations requiring COVID-19 testing, symptom track and monitoring, contact tracing, mandatory mask wearing, frequent hand washing and disinfecting, physical distancing, isolation and quarantine measures. But again, you're a professor of these universities are requiring folks to be back in class, just like what's happening in NFL. People who are operating in close quarters, it gets unwieldy in terms of what you're able to control and who to control.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to manage, Roland, quite frankly. I mean, this November will mark 30 years since Magic Johnson announced he was HIV positive, and we all remember that and the shockwaves it sent through. Whether it be Kirk Cousins with the Vikings or somebody else, I suspect, Brother Watson, it's going to take a superstar getting COVID, maybe even dying, to finally send a message in what was a $16 billion profit industry in 2019 that made only $12 billion last year, the NFL. I mean, it's entertainment, and I've made the choice not to watch a snap since Kaepernick. But yeah, I taught my first class over at Howard Law School last night in person, and I can tell you right now, I don't see how any entity, any of the 400 colleges that have required that all of us be vaccinated, and most of those colleges and universities, by the way, in states that were voted for Biden in the election. So most of my colleagues at HBCUs, most of our colleagues, brother, since you're in the faculty at Fisk, are in the southern states, in those American apartheid states, being forced back. And I've been talking to a lot of my colleagues, and I'll tell you right now, whether it be students, staff, or faculty at any of these schools, especially our black schools, there's no way to enforce everybody all the time. The best you could do with all the resources would be kind of spot checks, temperature checks, maybe. Everybody's vaccination status has to be uploaded. And anybody who's been to the AUC knows the configuration of those schools. Spelman's behind a gate. They can do probably more than anybody. However, What you're talking about is a consortium. Any student in the AUC can take a class at any of the schools. And as a member of the faculty who, for the first time since last March, stepped into a classroom last night masked up with the students who are masked up, I can tell you right now, not only was I nervous, not only are they nervous, but this is far from being settled. And I don't expect any administration to be able to give any policy statement at any university that will encompass the desires and the will of the faculty for two reasons. Number one, the faculty is never of one mind. And number two, particularly at black schools, organizing faculty becomes a difficult proposition. That having been said, I suspect that the situation at Spelman, at Clark, at Morehouse, at Howard, at Claflin, at all the schools, all HBCUs, is going to be like at those other schools, the Georgetowns, the Stanfords, wherever. It's going to be a fluid standard, because I read the piece that Spelman had on its website. It's 20-some pages, and on page 2, it talks about extraordinary circumstances. None of us knows what this is going to do next week, the week after, and so I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to have to piece this out week by week, brother. But all of us are nervous, and all of us are concerned, particularly those of you who send your children to us to be educated. Believe me, we're all on pins and needles, brother.
And Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, I also work in higher ed. That's my hat. I'm not wearing that hat today, but it is a hat that I wear. And these policies have to be fluid because ultimately the public health advisories that are coming from the cities and the counties and where each of these universities are is fluid. It's based on infection rates. It's based on hospitalization rates and availability of ICU beds. There's a whole lot of factors that go into what create those advisories from the public health department. So, you know, just an anecdotal story from our campus, we had signs up. We were already like to tell everyone, look, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask and things are great. And then literally 5 days after we got every single sign up on campus, a new advisory hit and we had to go back and replace all of those signs. So you got to keep a booklet. What sign are we using this week?
The thing here, Ben, I think that, again, what you're seeing is that I think you're seeing the NFL, you're seeing teams, just like you're seeing in other areas, where folks are saying, we're going to be in control of our own destiny. So we're not going to wait, because when it comes to anything governmental, you're now dealing with political ideology. You're not dealing with political parties. You're not dealing with the base and people and their feelings. And so folks are saying, hey, you know what? Look, I had I've had folks get an attitude when I required vaccination for my company here. Here's my whole deal. Go start your own shit. No, I mean, I'm sorry, because at the end of the day, I've got 15 people to protect, and those 15 people have husbands, wives, girlfriends, partners, children. They've got other relatives, and so you have to make decisions that's actually best for you. And if somebody, and again, I love the people who keep hollering choice, like Tank, you know, sent out, he put up this video and he got his ass dragged where he was talking about choice and stuff along those lines and, you know, and all this sort of stuff like this. This is what is now on his Instagram page. Go to my computer. My personal decisions are none of your business. Enjoy the music, The General. Well, guess what? When you start running your mouth out there and then people respond, just like Kirk Cousins, they responded, and he lost an endorsement from a hospital there in Minnesota. When you had Jay Cutler, who ran his mouth about he didn't like mask mandates, and Uber Eats said, holla at you later. And here's the deal, Ben, it's choices. And guess what? Those companies are going to have the choice whether to be in business with you based upon your choices.
They do,
No,
and
absolutely.
choices always have consequences. I mean, I have 7 children, and so my wife and I tell them all the time, your choices actually have consequences. Those 7 children, well, 5 of them are school age, and the school they went to 2 weeks ago, before school started, there was an optional mask mandate, and then before school started, it changed into a mandatory mask mandate for several weeks, and it's going to be fluid. That's the thing. I think that part of the frustration that so many of us have is that we just don't have the solid, concrete information that we're used to having. I'll take it to the NFL. A lot of players were tweeting and upset a couple weeks ago when the NFL made that new memo, because the expectation was, if I get this shot, I won't be tested, I won't get the virus, I won't be able to pass the virus. And as we've seen, people who are vaccinated can get the virus. Their symptoms, however, are nowhere near as what they would be if you didn't have it. They can also pass the virus. And so that's where we are right now. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that companies, corporations, they have to take care of the people that they're entrusted with taking care of. They have to make the right choice at the right time, which will allow their business to continue. And right now, that's to tell people to get the vaccine. But the frustrating part is that the frustrating part is that it's been so politicized in the beginning, which it should not have been. And also, there's such an evolving recommendation coming from the experts that people many times have a certain distrust, and it makes it difficult for those making decisions to make them.
Well, let me say this here, and Ben, feel free to pass it on. If there's any NFL player who is confused or concerned about the details, tell me they should watch this damn show. Here's why. Here's why, and this is very basic for anybody who's watching. And I've heard other people talk about, oh, well, this was told and then things changed. Yes, because that's what viruses do. Right. Viruses wreak havoc. They create changes. And the thing is, last night we had Dr. Graves from North Carolina A&T on, who specifically explained what happens when a number of people chose not to get vaccinated, how the virus mutates when it hops from one body to the other, and how it is forever changing. A virus is constantly trying to figure out a new way to hurt more people based upon the previous person. And so I think part of the problem here is that there are a lot of Americans, white, black, Latino, Asian, Native American, I don't care who they are, a lot of people. This is what is a problem with, I think, for a lot of us Americans. We want certainty. If I take this shot, I'm cured, 100%, I'm warding everything off. Nope. Then they're like, okay, what's the deal? Well, because there are a thing called strains, there are variants. Well, what do you mean there's a strain? I took the vaccine. Yes, the vaccine that you took was specifically meant for the COVID-19, that particular virus. New variant, you require a different type of vaccine. And I think that's what's been driving me crazy when people, I listen, first of all, I don't listen to the idiot Joe Rogan, never, okay? When he's trashing Fauci, oh, he's been 100% wrong. No, he's not. They are in a constant race. They are constantly trying to figure out where this thing is going. It literally is trying to catch a comet by the tail, because you don't know where it's going next. And I think the problem for this country is we like for everything to be nice and neat, in the box, perfect. Here's the whole deal, it's all straight, everything is just fine. No, it just doesn't happen that way, and that's what's driving people crazy. And this is why I keep saying we're going to keep putting black scientists and black doctors, people who are literally trained in this, discussing this. If I want to have an in-depth conversation about how to become an NFL all-pro tight end, I'm probably gonna call you, Ben. I'm not gonna call that brother down the street, okay, who got 38 followers, but he's dangerous with Google. And I just think that that's what the NFL did, which I think is important. They said to the players, oh, you got questions? Here are experts. Ask any of them questions. And a lot of players did that, but you didn't have all of these, again, these YouTube doctors and these Google historians out here. And I hear your point about, you know, black folks in history when it came to medical stuff. But guess what? White folks are taking the same vaccine we taking. Right. Same one. And so that's where I think credible voices, and I went on Tank's page and I said, Tank, your ass ain't no expert on singing, but not this shit. And so somebody just got to go ahead and say it.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, that's why the NFL is at 92%. I mean, I can't, there's not another population. I mean, the general population is nowhere near that. And so you're right about the experts. We got experts together. We've had, I say we, I'm retired now, but I've been on some of the calls. They've had several calls with multiple medical experts to ask all the questions that you need. A lot of guys were concerned about their families. A lot of guys are concerned they got pregnant wives, they've got little kids. Some guys, I even talked to guys that were in college over the last year, some guys who actually opted out of their last college year and they're going into the NFL draft. Some of them opted out because they live with their grandmother. They wanted to take care of her. And so the information is out there. And I agree with you 100% as far as the expectations. That's what's frustrating. But it's even more frustrating when you have a certain expectation and you feel like it's not met and you wonder what you can do to trust the next recommendation. You got to keep pushing those things out.
So I'm gonna hit up. So go to my computer. I'm gonna hit up Ebony, and we're gonna see if we can do this. And so Ebony Hilton sent this out. This was in response to these posts that Bakari made. Excuse me, that Tank made. Bakari sell a slam tank for us, and then she said, "I honestly feel a candid conversation on a big platform gonna help so many. Just go through questions. I'm volunteering myself," and she mentioned all these doctors. So here's what we are going to do. Okay, this is what we are going to do. So we now have the ability for us to be able to take calls. And so I think what we're going to do is, and we're going to try to work it out, we're going to try to pick a day next week to do exactly that. Whole 2-hour show, we're going to have real doctors. No disrespect to entertainers, nobody who's in entertainment, nobody who's in sports, nobody who's dancing, real scientists and doctors. And folks, you got questions, fine, ask them. That's what we're gonna do, because it has to happen, because there are too many people. I got 2 texts this week, fraternity brother, again, brother refused to take a doggone vaccine, he dead. Another guy who's sitting here, his best friend wouldn't take the vaccine, wouldn't do anything. Guess what? His best friend's now planning his funeral. And so there are too many of us who can be living longer, but are making other choices. So I'll be going to try to do that. Ben Watson, I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, sir.
All right, thank you so very much.
Folks, back to that Roland Mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
Football bans and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guests, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
Don't forget, folks, Roland Martin Unfiltered is going to be broadcasting live from Atlanta on Friday and Saturday. Friday, we'll be at the Atlanta Braves Stadium talking to the presidents of both universities, as well as officials with the SWAC and MEAC. Then on Saturday, we'll be at the Coca-Cola Fan Zone, broadcasting live from that particular afternoon. And then, of course, we'll be live streaming the halftime show and the concert taking place after the game. You can watch it at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And we appreciate it, in partnership with Coca-Cola, of making this happen. See you next week.
All across the country, cases are exploding, and it is really happening in this, we call it this red belt. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. Joining us right now is Dr. Alexia Gaffney. She's an infectious disease specialist. And just so people understand how maddening this is, Doc, you have the governor of Texas, this idiot, Greg Abbott, who now is threatening to pull the liquor license of restaurants that require COVID vaccination proof to enter the restaurant. I mean, but he's the same person begging neighboring states, hey, can you take free of ICU beds for citizens of Texas? I mean, that to me is the stupidity, where you have school districts and restaurants trying to be responsible, and this idiot, you know, running after all these right-wing lunatics, is saying, oh, I'm going to snatch your liquor license. And in Austin, I just saw the story. 2 restaurants in Austin, Texas, have stopped doing it because the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission threatened to pull their liquor license.
Unbelievable. These people literally have blood on their hands, and they're completely unbothered by it. And apart from their political gain, it's like, what is the sense in all of this? Why would you put people's lives on the line? Why would you now put children's lives on the line? And why would you do it so willfully and so maliciously? What is being done here is absolutely dangerous. And when school districts and businesses try to work around these mandates, or really the lack of any sensible mandates, they're now being punished for it. It's despicable. Right now, we're seeing more pediatric hospitalizations for COVID-19 than we've seen in the entirety of the pandemic. And it is, as you said, it's in the red states. It's in the places in the country where there are the least amount of individuals vaccinated or fully vaccinated for COVID-19. And children 12 and under, or under 12, can't yet receive the vaccine. So in these southern states where children have already returned to school, where teachers may not be vaccinated, where it's unlawful to enforce a mask mandation, we're seeing schools shut down already within the first 2 weeks or within the first 3 days of school because of outbreaks and rampant exposure to COVID-19. And it is dangerous and it is life-threatening. This whole false notion that children were not at significant risk for COVID-19 infection in the early phase of the pandemic was simply true and unfounded. When COVID first hit the United States, we pulled our children out of school and we protected them. So we closed up the spaces where children most rampantly spread infection, and we protected them. So we did not see cases. And now people are trying to utilize or falsely utilize this data, give a false impression that children can sort of withstand COVID-19 infection, and we've thrown the children into the fire. Even though most children may do well with COVID-19 infection, it is completely senseless that any child should lose their life to this infection when it can be prevented, when it can be avoided. And they are pulling out all the stops to pretty much ensure that people will get sick, be hospitalized, and die from this infection. And it is senseless and it's dangerous, and it's very disheartening to see as a healthcare professional.
Here are two tweets that I think sums it up. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee announces executive order that allows parents to opt out of local mask mandates imposed by school boards and independent health departments. This happens on the same day that he activated the National Guard to help hospital care for COVID patients.
This is, cognitive dissonance at its finest. And why are we allowing the parents to choose for their children when the parents do not know any better? How can these parents decide that they know better than public health officials, that they know better than epidemiologists, that they know better than physicians, that they know better than scientists and actual researchers, not the people sitting on their toilet bowl Googling and watching Facebook videos and watching YouTube videos, but the people who have actually studied and understand how a pandemic works, how an epidemic works, how we can control the spread of infection. How we are deferring to parents who don't have their children's best interests at heart is beyond me. And in our communities, we've seen people have their children removed from their care or removed from their custody for lesser offenses. And we have these people who are willfully putting their children's life and health and well-being on the line to I don't even know why they're doing this. It's not to prove a point. It's really just to defy the people who have their best interests at stake. So now we have some folks who are really looking out for the best interests of everybody, and then we have other people who are just willfully defying that. And we're at a complete split, and it's costing people their lives. You have healthcare professionals who are burning out, especially in and around the Tennessee area. You have healthcare professionals saying, listen, we did all we could in the first wave of this pandemic, and we're doing all we can right now. But right now we're exhausted, we're burnt out, we're ready to quit, and we're just over it because all of this is preventable. And so it's literally like a civil war that's going on between those who are trying to protect the health and well-being of both the vaccinated people and the unvaccinated people, and those who are vulnerable but not yet candidates for vaccine, i.e. our children, and some of the most vulnerable adults in our population. And you have the people on the other side who just don't frankly seem to give a damn. There's not a better way to say it.
Dr. Gaffney, we always appreciate it. Thank you so very much. One of the reasons why we continue to have black health experts on here and not what I call all of these Google physicians.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you for having me on, Roland.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. You do the same. Avis, on that particular point, I'm really sick of these people who don't even know what the hell is in an Advil. But when their damn head hurts, they'll take an Advil. But all of a sudden, they want to question a COVID vaccine.
I mean, really, for real. It's so infuriating because it's not like we can just take these people and plop them on an island someplace so that they could just infect each other and have a good old time with spreading around the Delta variant and every other variant that's going to come as a result of their stupidity. Okay? No, unfortunately, they're mixed among us. And when you have them in governor's offices, where they are literally, I would believe, honestly, they're just playing this for their own political gain. To me, it just boils down to nothing less than plain evil. Because this type of ridiculousness, where on the one hand, you're going to undermine the success of businesses for you to make a political point, while at the same time, you're putting people's lives in danger and asking other states to clean up your mess for you is absolutely ridiculous. You know, I really hope people are paying attention and somehow are able to overcome all the challenges that's going on with the voting laws in Texas right now to be able to get this complete, insane evildoer and any others like him out of office.
Congo, I get a kick out of the folks who say, oh, absolutely not. I'm not taking a vaccine. And I had somebody who was saying that for me, look, I got God protected me, and the person responded, so when you get sick, you going to the church?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Look, the way I see it, I say, you know, God sent us the scientists and the doctors that helped create the vaccine. And so it's like, where do you really want to draw the line as it relates to how much you're going to look to the sky, you know, for assistance? At the end of the day, it's really sad because what Dr. Gaffney said, which is really important for us to pay attention to, is the fact that kids were generally protected last year because we kept them home. Now we're just throwing them out there, and like they say, when two elephants battle, it's the grass that gets trampled. And it's really unfortunate, and I think that right now what we're seeing is that these governors, these Congress folks, these guys, if they have kids, none of them, their kids are going to the schools that are going to be affected by it. They're in private schools that have mask mandates, and they're completely separated from everything that's going on. As Dr. Weaver said, these people are evil, and I don't know if enough voters who support them are going to wake up. And if we don't get this voting rights issue fixed, these guys are going to end up staying in power for the long term, and we're going to have more deaths. And so we need to get up. We need to act up. We need to hit the streets. And I commend all of the businesses that are out there trying to make the right decisions, who are fighting these governors. And yes, Texas Supreme Court sided with Abbott. This might go to the higher courts, and I'm hoping that, given some of the things that we saw with Coney Barrett, we might be able to get some justice with the Supreme Court to some of these cases, make it there. Fingers crossed, but it shouldn't have to get this far.
Tell you, it's crazy, Mike Brown, and I swear, I'm telling you, I was at the Kim Babyface Music Soul Child concert. I dropped in Houston, and the sister comes up to me from Arizona, and she's like, why won't you have people on your show who give the other side of the story? I said, I'm sorry, what's the other side? She says, well, I'm not vaccinated. I said, well, first of all, back the hell up. Her ass unvaccinated, got a mask dangling from her wrist. I said, I need you to back your ass up. And she says, well, you know, I have a pharmacist, and he doesn't believe in the vaccine. I said, well, first of all, he ain't a doctor. I said, that's the first thing. But she said, it's the other side of the story. I said, yeah, death, that's the flip side. I'm telling you, it's been tripping me out, the folks I've been running into. But I literally told her, back your ass up. You ain't going to be in my face talking to me about you ain't taking the COVID vaccine with a mask dangling from your damn wrist. Back the hell up. Go on, back up.
You know, I find it interesting. I'm wondering, clearly, I think we saw some of the footage last week, and I think you may have even shown some of the footage of in Tennessee, and there's like a school board meeting, and the people in the parking lot were obviously were yelling at folks that wanted to support the mask mandate. And I'm wondering this correlation between, I hate to assume, but I'm assuming those were Trump supporters in the parking lot. And then with black folks that are not Trump supporters, that are still believing in the same conspiracies that the Trump supporter is. I mean, it's very interesting to me how that has occurred in this political dynamic. I mean, for example, I don't even know if some of these Trump supporters know, or even black folks that are believing in some of these conspiracy theories, Trump got the shot. He got vaccinated.
Yep.
He wanted to protect himself. Why he doesn't tell the world that, or doesn't do his own PSA? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we all know because they like talking to stupid people. That's what they like doing.
Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek.
What's going on? This Quavo Huncho, but right now you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spio is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. In Paris, Texas, the school board has figured out a loophole from Governor Greg Abbott's ban against masks. They said, let's just make it part of the school uniform dress code. Gotta love outsmarting his ass on that one.
I mean, it's a shame we have to do that. You know, I watched yesterday as the news came out that he's positive for COVID. And of course, he'll likely be just fine because he's vaccinated. So he's having all these maskless gatherings and just bragging about all the standing room only crowds, and the people in there are getting sick. He's getting people sick, going around with COVID, and then he'll get himself to be fine. He'll have the best insurance possible. He'll have the best care possible while his constituents are dying. It's atrocious that school systems have to go to these measures just to keep themselves, their employees, and students safe.
Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Football bans and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guests, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
And, of course, we'll be live in Atlanta August 27th and 28th, supporting the SWAC MEAC Challenge in partnership with Coca-Cola. Friday, we'll broadcast the show from the Atlanta Braves Baseball Stadium, interviewing officials with the SWAC and the MEAC, plus the university presidents. On Saturday, August 28th, we'll be broadcasting live from the Coca-Cola fan zone outside of the stadium. And then, of course, we'll be live streaming the halftime show and the performance after the game. So check out Roland Martin Unfiltered from the SWAC MEAC Challenge in Atlanta. And don't forget, the game airs at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN on Saturday, August 28th. For many progressives, Indy qualified immunity was the major point of the Judge Floyd Justice Act. Now we're hearing legislators in the United States Senate are removing qualified immunity as an option from the latest bill. Of course, qualified immunity protects law enforcement officers from from civil accountability for wrongdoing. This protection affords officers escape from punishment when they commit crimes like murder, assault, theft while on duty. Now, advocates argue qualified immunity abolishes police accountability. What you also have, though, is you have police unions and others who say, no, it should remain in. Progressives say if qualified immunity is removed, they will not support this bill, which would cause leading to a death blow to what is already a tenuous situation. Joining us right now is Dr. Rashad Brackney, Charlottesville, Virginia Chief of Police. Glad to have you here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. So let's talk about this here because, again, all we heard last year in the wake of George Floyd's death, when this bill was put forth, ending qualified immunity was in the House bill. You've had this constant back and forth in the United States Senate. You've had others, many say, if you take this out, you really have no bill. Your thoughts?
So I don't think it's a binary, right? We always seem to think that things are either one or the other and that there's no room in between. I think what our citizens are asking for, the community is asking for, is a pathway forward to civil accountability when an officer does something that violates their constitutional rights. And they want it in such a way that it's not so strict or so narrow or so unique that no one can ever get civil. Remember that, civil relief, not necessarily criminal relief.
So, but the thing that we're dealing with here is that you have the unions, the sheriff's folks, others, they're fighting this, saying, no, you cannot lose that. But what form of accountability do you have for police officers? Look, this has to get passed. You have folks on the right saying we're going to stand with these law enforcement officers. You have folks on the left who are saying you got to end police, you got to end qualified immunity. So what is the happy medium? Is there one?
Well, I actually think there is. And NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, of who I am a member, we say that the pathway forward may be that you remove the qualified immunity from the organizations itself. Most officers are going to be indemnified when there is a lawsuit or when there's a settlement. In other words, the organization, the municipality already pays that. So if the pathway forward is roll back those immunities from the municipality or the organization or the police department, you can still then leverage all of your rights or your pathways to get monetary relief, civil monetary relief through another way. And I think we should explore that a little more as we go forward, right? And there is some protections and reasons that they originally were put in place. But I think that they're so narrow that very few people ever can really get any relief or justice by attempting to use a civil suit in which qualified immunity protections are leveraged or defense is leveraged.
But the thing that really jumps out here for so many people is that the onus is really on city councils and county governments having to pay these enormous penalties, and that many believe, again, that until officers are held personally accountable, then they're not going to necessarily change their behavior.
We'll say, I think there's two pathways forward to that. And the first one is we need a criminal legal system that is going to hold the officers accountable. The reason that there's this hue and cry for civil accountability is because there's no faith in the criminal legal system to hold officers accountable when they violate someone's constitutional rights. Very few prosecutions and very few convictions, if any. We see an anomaly or an outlier like George Floyd, and we see there's such relief that there was some sort of justice. But if you think about it, the monetary civil actions, and you're right, the municipalities settled in advance of these criminal charges going through the system and being fully adjudicated. So it should not be on the taxpayers' backs individually, but also if we're going to roll it back, there needs to be those concepts of how we do that for other politicians, other municipal and other federal and other government workers that may also are afforded those same protections.
But let's also be honest here. One of the reasons you do not have the criminal accountability is because the laws literally are set up to give police officers, wide latitude. And so very few DAs are loath to prosecute cops. Fewer grand juries are loath to prosecute them. In fact, just today, a judge threw out murder charges against some Hawaii police officers where a grand jury declined to indict them. The district attorney felt there should be a trial. They go to court. The judge says, not enough probable cause, charges thrown out. And so residents then say, my goodness, when do we ever actually see justice? I mean, in the case of George Floyd, that was one of the few cases where it went to actual trial.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. You will get no fight from me when we talk about police accountability. I just testified yesterday in front of the Virginia committee on that's advising the U.S. Commission on Human Rights and police accountability. And the systems that are currently in place do have a lot of gaps. And that is why people are railing against the system. And they've turned this moment into an actual movement. And not even just for police reform, right? The entire system needs to be reformed from the very beginning, from the entry point, from policing through prosecution, all the way through to our judges and our elected officials. And they are very representative of some of the problems that exist, whether it's the relationships that exist between them that are symbiotic and they rely on each other in order to get their work done. But the key has to be the continued high visibility and pressure to get something done. And I think that, again, the pathway forward is at least to start removing some of those protections from the municipal agencies as well, because then they'll have some responsibility and ownership as to who they hire. We look at some of these officers, they've been in front of their internal processes 10, 20, 30 times, and they still remain employed or still in that agency. It's because the municipality or the police department or the organization is shielded from those protections. So they're not invested in. They have no skin in the game under the same qualified immunity as that individual officer has.
All right, then. Well, we certainly appreciate it. We'll see what happens. Many folks wanted this bill to be signed on by the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. It is not the case. Here we are in August, and we still have no signs as to whether or not this bill is going to come up for a vote in the United States Senate. Dr. Brackney, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to go to my panel, Reese Colbert, Black Women Views, Dr. Greg Carr, Professor, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. Also, we are joined by Adrian Irmer, Fellow, New Leaders Council, Chicago. Glad to have all three of you here. This is one of those things here, Greg, that we have to be very honest about in terms of what's going on here. The police folks we're going to fight this. That was always the case. Early, you heard Congressman Jim Clyburn saying that, hey, we could take this off the table if it means getting the bill passed. Here's the problem. You remove qualified immunity from the bill and it passes the Senate, there's no guarantee it's going to pass the House.
That's true. In fact, there's probably a guarantee that it doesn't. Greatly appreciated your interview with Dr. Brackney, with Chief Brackney, and the work of Noble. Because trapped in those blue uniforms are many black and brown officers, officers of goodwill, officers who decided to join law enforcement because they wanted to protect their communities and serve their communities. And they are trapped by the white nationalists, by the Klan, by the white nationalist, white supremacist organizational logic of policing, which is about control and punishment. So we saw Tim Scott doing Tim Scott things again. He and Lindsey Graham last month met with the sheriffs, the National Sheriff's Association. And we saw after that he pulled back on his counter offer to say, well, maybe you can have qualified immunity removed against the departments. And that's what we heard Dr. Brackney say. If you move it to the municipalities, the police departments, but that misses the essential point. It is a philosophy of lawlessness that organizes punishment in this country as it relates to the law. That means that officers literally have a license to kill, to beat, to steal, a license to shoot. And that is what they don't want removed. So after they met with the sheriffs, Senator Scott pulled that back. So I think that, in fact, the removal of qualified immunity, and of course, Congressman Clyburn initially said, doing Jim Clyburn things, that he could live without qualified immunity. That's the end of this legislation, brother.
Adrian, Chicago is one of those places where we've seen significant issues with cops. We saw Jason Van Dyke, who was convicted for the murder of Laquan McDonald, but we've seen a lot of pushback from cops there when they're being held accountable, and that's really what this boils down to. Many police officers do not want to be held accountable, and so the blue is an extremely powerful force in this country. And many people, when they sit on grand juries, they give cops wide latitude and tremendous benefit of the doubt when they are brought before a judge or jury in a trial.
No, absolutely. I mean, Chicago certainly isn't different than most other major jurisdictions across the country when it comes to a lack of police accountability and oversight. We recently had the passage of the Civilian Office for Police Accountability from City Council, which is earth-shattering and earth-rocking for Chicagoans, because this would literally be the first time citizens have an opportunity to chime in on the investigation and accountability process for officers in Chicago. So I'm very hopeful to see the future of this in the city. But I'm definitely going to agree with Dr. Carr. Absent the teeth in police reform, which is reforms to qualified immunity, repealing it altogether, the rest of the reforms are for headlines and to make people feel as though they've done something, but they're not substantive at all.
That's the thing right there that jumps out at us, Reese, and that is people want to see something done. Look, and the Floyd family made it perfectly clear that they were not going to be happy with just any bill. They wanted there to be substance in it.
Yeah, but I'm going to disagree with you all. And I've said time and time again that I don't understand why everything has to be this all-encompassing sweeping bill that solves 100% of all the problems. The fact is that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was hailed as the most comprehensive police reform bill that was ever created. This was held by many criminal justice reform experts and advocates. And so, yes, qualified immunity being stripped from this bill is a loss, but I would like to remind everybody that a lot of the things that actually spurred people getting out on the streets to protest, things like the no-knock warrants that led to Breonna Taylor's murder, is part of this bill. Also, ban on chokeholds, which is what ended up killing George Floyd, as well as others. So those are things that are still in this bill. A national police misconduct registry is still a part of this bill. Something like that would have potentially saved Tamir Rice from being killed by the cops that were actually had misconduct from other departments, but they're allowed to just go to another department and not report that kind of things. Also, the standard of which would for police are held to where they have to prove that they were reckless, as opposed to that they have to prove there's a higher standard that makes it almost impossible to convict these cops of any kind of wrongdoing. So it changes from was it reasonable, was it necessary, to was it reasonable. And so there is still a lot of wins in this bill. And if you don't get 100% of it, then have a standalone qualified immunity bill and try to get that through. But I'm just not of the mindset that, that without this, nothing else counts. And, I think that progressives tend to cherry pick one thing that they want to hang their hat on and say that this is the most important thing, this is the only important thing, and if that doesn't happen, this is worthless. And I just don't agree with that. I think that we have to get the wins where we can get the wins. We have to get the reforms where we can get the reforms. All or nothing is why we constantly end up with nothing. And in this case, I know that a lot of people feel like it's nothing without qualified immunity, but that only changes, to Dr. Brackney's point, the civil aspect, when there's a lot of things in here that changes the criminal aspect. And that's what's really letting these cops off the hook from any kind of criminal charges.
But the problem is we don't even know then what's going to come out of the United States Senate. And so we also don't know what else was taken out. And that's sort of where we are. I mean, early, 2 months ago, I was hearing that Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott were proclaiming, oh, they could bring 20, 25 Republicans along. I don't see them. And so now here we're heading into September, and we still have no idea if there's even a bill that's actually going to come out of the Senate.
If there's no bill, then nothing gets accomplished, right? So, I mean, it's not just about qualified immunity accomplishing nothing. If that's out of it, nothing gets accomplished if there's no bill. But if you can get a bill that has at least some of these reforms in there, that is progress.
Well, no. And what I'm saying is we don't even know what else hasn't been taken out or else, right, or is what's included. And so that's also, so the deal. So I get that. I get the idea of having a bill, but you also want to know if look, there's some bills that get passed that frankly have no teeth. There's some bills that get passed that really are more ceremonial. The question is, will a bill get passed in the Senate, or are they going to put a bill up that actually has some teeth in it?
That is the question, absolutely. And I think when we see the full bill, we can evaluate it at that time for what it actually accomplishes. What I'm saying is I'm not willing to write off the criminal justice reform efforts entirely because of one specific thing, which I concede is a big deal. I'm not saying that it's not a big deal, but what I'm saying is I'm not willing to write it all off, given the other things that we know of were at least in the bill at some point. Now, if they're no longer in the bill, then we can judge it as a simply ceremonial bill, something like the Juneteenth signing. But if there is still a lot of these things that were championed, not just by the senators and the House of Representatives, but by actual criminal justice organizations and advocates and experts, then that's when I'll make my decision as to whether or not it's worth a damn. But until then, I'm going to withhold some judgment on whether or not anything will be accomplished.
All right, well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I think we have to separate. There are two different things I think we're talking about. One, let's assume that everything that is currently in the bill except qualified immunity remains in the bill. I do agree that that would make that bill better than the alternative. Even as we understand, at the end of June, the New York State Supreme Court struck down the New York banning the Eric Garner Act, banning chokeholds for being unconstitutionally vague. We understand that if everything in the bill remains in the bill and is passed and goes to the president for signature and becomes law, that does not address the fact that without qualified immunity, a nationwide database will not result in not hiring the killers. It'll just make sure that the people realize that they have a staunch record of killing, robbing, and shooting before they hire them. It won't get rid of chokeholds. It will simply mean that the force that was applied will then go to the grand jury that won't indict, will go to the prosecutors that won't. The key to all the other reforms is striking the fear in the pocketbook of individual killers. Because as long as we are paying for that murder through lawsuits, and be very clear, if Minneapolis had not settled, George Floyd's family wouldn't get a dime, because the lack of qualified immunity, in fact, would mean that once the city says, come get us, and the court decides that there is no constitutional level of civil rights violation because the officer had that discretion, they are now precluded from going after Derek Chauvin. Let's be very clear. If everything in that bill remains, hey, I'm saying, hey, go ahead. Corey Bush has said, if we compromise, we die. It's not too far from the truth if you take out the one thing. They are not all equal. Qualified immunity, in fact, is the platform on which all the rest of those things rest. They're two different things, I think.
But Dr. Carr, I respect that. But one thing I will say is, I mean, we found that white supremacy is still profitable even outside of the system protecting it. Look at Cal Rittenhouse. He raised over $1 million for his bail. He's walking the streets free, not dead from selling loosies on the street, on the street like others are. So, I mean, there's always going to be a bailout for killers, for whether they're cops, whether they're white supremacists, white nationalists. So, I mean, in that case, we can never solve any of these issues. So, I mean, I agree we can, but I just think that there is some merit to what is being proposed. It's not going to solve everything, because at the end of the day, in this country, we have a white nationalist way of policing. And we've talked about that time and time again. But I'm just saying that there are some measures that can improve at least a little bit. And I know that that's not a lot, but I do think that it's worth at least acknowledging that if that does in fact pass.
Adrian, go ahead.
So from the legislative process, or from that perspective, if you don't get the teeth in the bill on the front end, you're going to have a very hard time going, if not impossible, getting them added via the amendment process. So that's why members of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party in Congress, or the Democrats in Congress, are saying, no, if it's not there, this bill does not do what we set out to do in drafting it. And I like I said, I agree with Dr. Carr in his assessment that if you remove the stick, the biggest stick in the bill, it no longer becomes a deterrent for terrible behavior in uniform. I don't disagree with you either, sis, in your assessment that there's always going to be a bailout for racists, because there are so many of them out there who want to use these folks as martyrs for their movement and continue to build momentum on their side of things. So you're not wrong in that. I just think that if we continue to take this mindset of these little teeny tiny wins are acceptable, then we'll never get the big stick ultimately.
Well, we're still waiting to see exactly what comes out of the U.S. Senate, and so we'll just have to wait and see.
Folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Folks, from Seek.com, black-owned company founded by Mary Spio. Folks, got a couple of products that's for our listeners and viewers. This is their VR headset where you can watch their content, 360-degree video, as well as virtual reality video. Just pop your phone right into here, close it up, and then you can see that VR content. They got different color VR headsets. This one is blue and white. Y'all Sigmas will love that one. Of course, I prefer the black and gold one. That's the one I have at the house. You also, of course, have their headphones. Greg, you'll like these here. They got the black and gold headphones, but Greg, you might like these all gold ones right here. You might like these right here. 360-degree sound as well. You can use this for gaming. You can use this, of course, for music as well, watching movies, all of that good stuff. Use the promo code RMVIP21, RMVIP21, if you want to actually get one of these two products. And of course, when you purchase them, the resources portion of that comes back to us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered.